Jim Jordan lied about the 2020 election.
Then they added fraud on top of it, and that's why President Trump wasn't elected president.
It was that lie that caused the insurrection at the Capitol.
I don't know how you can ever convince me that President Trump didn't actually win this thing.
They knew President Trump was going to win on election night, but they wanted to keep looking for and finding and counting ballots.
He almost destroyed our democracy.
Got 11 million more votes than he did in 2016, but somehow the guy who never left his house wins the election.
Jim Jordan should never be the Speaker of the House.
It's Ken Harbaugh with Against All Enemies on the MeidasTouch Network, with Jim Jordan a couple votes away from becoming Speaker of the House, which would put him 2 heartbeats away from the presidency. I wanted to talk to someone who knows him well, a fellow veteran and Ohioan and Democrat who is running against Jim Jordan for Congress. Jeff Sites has quite a hill to climb. It's going to be a tough race, but I wanted to bring him on to share with this audience just how dangerous Jim Jordan really is. Jeff, welcome to Against All Enemies.
Thanks for having me on, Ken.
Jeff, we rolled a clip at the top of the show that barely scratched the surface of Jim Jordan's involvement in the January 6th insurrection. Can you share with us how deeply he was engaged in that effort?
Well, I don't have personal, interactions with anybody on the Hill or anything like that, but from the coverage I saw, it looks like he was pretty well deep into the weeds with Trump and all of his insurrectionists. And, we'll see where it all pans out into the future.
That is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Jim Jordan's scandalous history. He's been a rep in the Ohio 4th, I believe, for a very long time. I want you to share with us what constituents in the Ohio 4th think of him. I mean, he keeps winning, but of late, some new scandals have emerged, and they've really painted him in a different light.
Right, and I've talked to a couple of the wrestlers. They communicated to me what the atmosphere was during that time that all the abuse was happening. Like the gym was totally open to anybody that could just stroll in, go into the saunas, and sit down and just watch all the athletes. That tells you volumes of what was going on at the time. I was also at our first Veterans Caucus here in Ohio.
Hang on, Jeff. Give us the backstory, just a little bit of context on that wrestling scandal. Jim Jordan was a coach at a time in which a number of his athletes were abused, right?
Right. He was, I can't remember the exact number of the athletes that were abused during that scandal. Athletes are telling us that they went to Jim Jordan. They asked him for help. They asked them to stop the abuse. He did nothing about it. Some people I talked to, he just kind of blew it off completely when they approached him. But it wasn't just the wrestlers per se. At a Veterans Caucus, I was approached by an athlete from that time frame who was a gymnast. Said he was cornered in the shower by 3 wrestlers. He later went to Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan said, well, I guess they're not very good wrestlers. That tells you volumes about a coach that doesn't want to protect the athletes. And it goes on to say, will he actually work for the people if he's not willing to help athletes during a scandal like that?
And a number of these wrestlers have come forward publicly, and other abuse victims. They've come forward publicly. They've made public statements. They've even testified before the Ohio legislature, and Jim Jordan has basically laughed in their faces.
That is correct. I mean, when it was in the limelight years ago, there was talk that Jim Jordan was trying to call these wrestlers to squash the whole scandal. Was reportedly crying on the phone to one of them. Again, that doesn't speak volumes of a person that I want representing us, let alone somebody that would be coaching one of my kids going to college. So it's just a terrible situation that happened there.
He was begging those with firsthand knowledge of the scandal, of the abuse, to either lie about it or help him cover it up. in private conversations, reportedly, but in public, not only denying that he had no involvement, but making light of and mocking the entire situation.
Right. He denies, just like he's doing with, Trump and the election in 2020. He just doesn't want to have that scandal come out in public and see the real nuts and bolts of what went on there.
When it comes to January 6th, what is your intuition about Jim Jordan? Because to a lot of us, he seems like a true believer. There are the cynics out there who cover up for the former president, who make excuses for the insurrectionists, and you get the sense that they are doing it for political reasons. I'm talking about the Nikki Haley's, occasionally Mike Pence, but Jim Jordan seems zealous in his defense of the former president, in his advocacy in the lead up to January 6th against the free and fair election of President Biden. Do you think he is a true zealot in his heart, or is he a cynic? I'm not sure which one's more dangerous, but I would love to get some understanding from someone a little closer to Jim Jordan to get a sense of who he is as a person.
Well, I think ever since I started running in 2020 or 2019, I felt he was after something. And when I had a conversation with another congressman, and he said, ever since Trump came along, Jordan has changed. And so I think he's after something. He's using Trump and sucking up to Trump to get something, whether it be the speakership or a VP slot. That's what I've thought all along. He's after the power. He's putting on a show. I don't think he really believes it. He's just after the power.
Well, his pursuit of power has led him to dehumanize the most vulnerable, not just the wrestlers on his team. I'm thinking in particular of that 10-year-old girl, rape victim in Ohio, who, because of our draconian anti-abortion laws, literally had to flee the state and get medical help in Indiana. And I can't think of a better example of dehumanization than Jim Jordan saying she didn't exist. I mean, denying her very existence. And then when called out, when the facts came out, blaming President Biden.
The laws here in Ohio are just terrible regarding abortions, let alone attacking a 10-year-old girl, someone's daughter, someone's granddaughter. That in itself is terrible. But more importantly, we should have laws that allow us to remedy that problem and not have them flee a state and then be attacked by a whole bunch of, politicians out there on the right. That in itself is just terrible.
Thanks for listening, everyone. I've got a quick break here, but I need a favor first. Shows like this depend on your support. Please, if you can spare 5 seconds, click the link to the podcast version of the show below and leave us a 5-star review. It really does help. Thanks. Jim Jordan, in response to that, didn't seek to learn more information, didn't seek to reach out to this family and express sympathy. He immediately resorted to the political attack, calling it a lie, and when called out on that, said it was Joe Biden's fault.
Right. I mean, he's playing to his base, his rabid base that is out there on the extreme right, the 30-some% that is, the MAGA crowd, including my brother. My brother's part of that crowd. He just wants to play to it and try and get as much power as he can. He doesn't care who he hurts. He doesn't care anything about helping people.
What are your biggest fears should he attain the speakership? I mean, we've seen the damage he can do as one of 435. What are your fears should he become second in line to the presidency only after the vice president?
Well, number one, he's going to create even more chaos and more division in the House. He's going to be going after, President Biden for impeachment, obviously, because it's always Hunter Biden and the Biden, crime family or whatever it may be. But more importantly, he is going to work even harder to get Trump reelected. And we know as veterans, Ken, that we took an oath against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And we're going to see that rise of insurrectionists again if Trump gets elected. Jordan will do his best to push anything that Trump wants through the House. If he's reelected, if he's still there, if he, can survive me. But that's the fear of it, is the insurrectionists and the MAGA crowd's going to take over the House. He's going to go after, anybody that opposes the MAGA crowd. And we're going to have some style of McCarthyism again.
What is your reaction to the argument that Democrats are partly to blame or wholly to blame for the chaos in the House? I'm going to play a short clip exposing some of these claims by Republicans on the far right, and then I want your thoughts.
What message do you think it sends to world leaders, especially those authoritarians that are very much against the United States, like Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping, that Congress doesn't seem to be able to reach a consensus over something as basic as the Speaker of the House of Representatives?
Well, the chaos today is because of the weakness in the Biden administration.
How?
The southern
it's your
border
party. It's members of your party.
The southern border
Kevin
is
McCarthy.
absolutely in chaos. The inflation that is
Congressman,
crushing
but respectfully, the reason the House doesn't have a speaker is not because of Joe Biden. It's because of members of your party. That's why the House doesn't have a speaker.
Jeff, what do you think? Should Democrats be holding the bag for Congress's inability to elect a speaker?
Absolutely not. This is their caucus. They are in the majority. They elect the Speaker of the House. They chose to take out their own speaker. It is not a Democrat problem. When we had control of the House, we were passing bills to help Americans out there. And ever since they took over, it's been Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, blah, blah, blah. Trump should have won. And they have done zero to help the American people out there. So this is all on their lack of leadership in the House.
Is there potentially a silver lining here? I am an optimist by nature, and I am looking for the silver lining in all this, which might be that Americans who don't pay attention every day to politics, and most shouldn't. We have jobs, we have lives, or Americans who are on the fence about the dysfunction of the Republican Party will finally, once and for all, see just how unable to govern this party is, and when they do have power, how badly they govern. Do you hope that the ascension of Jim Jordan, or at least the debate around Jim Jordan being next in line after the vice president for the highest office in the country, might pull the blinders off the eyes of more American voters?
Well, like you, I would hope that would happen. Unfortunately, the Republicans I talk to, they don't like Jim Jordan either. This has been going on since Janet Garrett ran way back in like 2016, I believe it was, that she heard the same thing. They don't like Jim Jordan. Well, stop voting for the man and vote for somebody that's going to represent you. And that is a Democrat. Now, if you don't want to vote for a Democrat, just don't vote for Jim Jordan and a Democrat will get in. But I don't think they're going to do it, unfortunately. They don't look at it like we do, as country over party. They look at it as party over country.
What do you think it will take to break that spell, to overcome that deep, deep sense of tribalism, almost cultishness that we see taking over Republican voters?
Well, what I think will happen is here in what, about 3 weeks, 2 weeks, something like that, the continuing resolution will run out. And if Jordan is speaker, I'm pretty sure that the government will shut down. And then a lot of people will suffer. Hopefully veterans and people in the military will realize that the Republican Party is not for them. They vote against military stuff all the time. I think that will start to crack the shell. What will really crack the shell, if Hakeem Jeffries gets elected speaker with the help of some Republicans, and I think together with bipartisanship, they will start to crack that MAGA hold on the Republican Party, and we can get back to governing for the people.
Well, Jeff, thanks for joining us. We can always hope for that. I think we need some hard-edged realism as well. The next couple of weeks will tell us a heck of a lot. Good luck in your race. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ken.